Spencer, since we saw you last time was about like what 7 months ago at Dances with Films.
Yeah.
This film has gone places. What has happened to Druid Peak? Can you tell us?
It has. It's been really fun. We've gone to, I mean, it's been to a ton of festivals that Maureen has gone to, our producer, and Marni's gone to a bunch of them as well. And but I personally have been to the Annapolis Film Festival and the Louisville Film Festival, and more recently we went to Mallorca for the Evolution Mallorca International Film Festival, which was really cool.
The film is a coming-of-age story about a troubled teenage boy who's sent to live with his father, and his father is a biologist on the wolf reintroduction program in Yellowstone National Park. And while he's out there, again, he's kind of a troubled kid, a damaged kid, and he discovers a home for himself in the wild, tracking wolves with his father. And the issue, it's been a sort of key issue in the West, and particularly in Wyoming, where we shot the film, for a long time. The wolves were actually reintroduced in Yellowstone in the early 90s, and the program was much more successful than anyone anticipated that it would be. And all of that led, it was a great success for conservation and for wildlife, and yet at the same time, it led to a whole host of issues that people hadn't fully anticipated in terms of how these animals interact with the surrounding communities, specifically in Wyoming, how they interact with the ranchers and the cattle and the ranching populations out there. And so it really just, it was a program that was at the kind of cutting edge of conservation, and then opened doors to a lot of questions that sort of need solving before more of those programs can happen and happen successfully.
You were saying last time that this is not necessarily a role you have played before.
Right.
Was it hard to get into that character? Was it a tough role to do?
Well, I will say that I had the relationship that the character develops with nature, and in particular the Wyoming itself. That was something that I had gone through myself when I went to camp in Wyoming when just before high school, and that was really valuable and informative for the character. But yeah, he's not a very nice kid in the beginning, and that was something that I had to delve into and to figure out this character and what makes him. What are the factors that make him as such? Because I don't believe that anyone's born that way. I think it's all a product of their circumstances. So analyzing that was sort of my process.
Well, I've had long-standing ties to Wyoming. Also was there and introduced Marni to the wolf reintroduction program study by taking her and our sons to hear a talk by one of the biologists with the program. So it was something that I was aware of and was already passionate about and very involved in. And so the story resonated with me. I also love Marni, and I just wanted to do anything I could to help get this movie made. When she was writing her script, she asked if she could stay at our house and write it so she could have some peace and quiet and be out of New York City, and we said, of course. And then she sent me the script, and I read it, and I absolutely loved it. I couldn't put it down. I read it in one sitting. She then asked if I would be her executive producer, and I said yes, and then I said, what does that mean? Because I didn't know what it meant. And essentially it meant problem solving. Dive in, let her and Rachel Morrison, our talented DP, and our crew do the creative aspect, and let me help in any way that I can to put the structure in place to find the horses and the cattle and the wolves and the housing and the feeding and the care of talent, and work with the mayor and the Wyoming Office of Tourism and everything else.
As your first film to write and direct, why this story? What compelled you to say, this is the one I'm going to write and I'm going to direct it too?
It's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. Because I didn't really come into filmmaking even thinking that I wanted to be a director. I wanted to be a writer. And again, I think that's the sort of journalism background and the fiction writing background that I had before I became a filmmaker. But this story was really personal to me. It was about a part of the country that I was really passionate about, and it was about a subject matter, conservation issues, and specifically predator reintroduction, that were issues that I again felt very personal to me, that were important globally, and so it was so my story that I felt like I needed to direct it.
How long did it take to shoot the entire thing?
About a month. So we shot for 26 days in Wyoming, and then a couple other days, actually I'm sorry, a little bit less than that. We shot 6 days in West Virginia, and then 21 days in Wyoming, and then 2 more days in Utah. So again, just about a month altogether.
And casting, how did you get the actors that you got?
So it's it's a low budget film. The film is a very low budget production, and to me, I always knew that I needed, you want great actors, but for this kind of production, particularly one that was going to be outdoors, it was going to be rugged, it was going to be moving through a lot of kind of interesting terrain. We also needed actors who were going to go on that journey with us and who weren't going to require a lot of perks, who were going to be excited just by the experience of being outdoors and working with the animals and working with our crew. So that was a funny way to cast. You're looking for great actors, but you're also looking for someone who's along for the ride.
Right, into it.
Yeah. And so the first person we cast was Spencer, and he came to us through one of the other producers on the film who had met him at Columbia where Spencer was studying. And I had been holding castings in New York, and we'd seen a bunch of actors, and one of my other producers, I had been to a bunch of auditions. No one had really struck us. And then I met Spencer just for a drink because he was a friend of a friend. And I sat down with him for not even 10 minutes, and I knew he was the right person for the film. He had ties to Wyoming. He had some just lovely, watchable quality to him where, for a part that I knew he was going to be on screen alone so much, or on screen with wolves, you needed someone who was very watchable, even if he wasn't doing anything, even if he wasn't interacting with another actor. And Spencer felt that way from the first moment. But he was just the good fortune of meeting him through another friend.
Marni had so many shoes to fill with, again, because it was an indie film, and she did it amazingly. So I mean, she had to be a director and writer and team manager and all those things, and that's sort of the process for a film that's like this. And yeah, it was great. It was we had so many cool people. I made so many friends on this film. I really did.
Andrew Wilson, who plays Spencer's father in the film, he was someone who I had my eye on, and Rabbit Bandini, again, James Franco's production, helped us get a script to him. He then read the script and really loved the film and said, despite the kind of no frills production, that he was game to do it.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to touch on, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
James Franco's involvement, how crucial, how essential were they in helping this film get off the ground?
They didn't play a very hands-on role in terms of the actual production, but they were a big help in terms of casting, and specifically with Andrew. Andrew was someone who, as a first-time director, and I didn't even really have short films that were out there. I had short films that I'd made at NYU, but I hadn't taken them on the festival circuit. I didn't have much of a calling card, but I didn't have other films that you could see. So having a name actor trust you is tricky. And what Rab Bandini really did was put their kind of a little bit of their clout behind that script.
When the film is finished, now you have to think about marketing, festivals, and that. What's that experience for you as an executive producer to go into? What was it like?
A steep learning curve, but I like a challenge. And right now we have had our theatrical release. We had our premiere here in Hollywood. We now are on pre-order and iTunes. We're on MGO. We're coming out on various different digital platforms. I'm working on some international distribution deals. And so yes, I mean, the goal is to obviously pay back our investors, recoup our funds, and launch this movie and get it seen by as many people as possible.
I've had 2 really gratifying different takes on it that I found to be really cool. One are from people from parents, and how they reflect on the relationship and between the father and son relationship in the film, and the one I probably get the most satisfaction from is from kids, from teenagers, and their experience with it. I've been interviewed by some high school students at various film festivals, and that's always been really fun, and especially for me as the character, that was sort of the perspective that I took into consideration the most. And it's fun. It's really cool to see the kids asking about the wolves and my experience, and that's been really gratifying for me.